Hello and welcome back to Excelsive. If you have been using Excel for some time, you must have come across the if function and probably have used it in a nested form, like using multiple if functions in a single formula. If you haven't, let me explain what is a nested if in today's example, and then we'll move to the function of the day, switch, which replaces nested if in certain situations and makes you wonder why were you ever using nested if functions when switch was there all along. Here we have a company's sales data. We have sales agents' names here and their total sales for the year 2022 to 2023. We had to give them performance score from 1 to 5, where 5 is the highest score that one can get and 1 the lowest score. And our criteria for the score is mentioned here. If someone has generated less than $25,000 in sales, he gets a score of 1, which gives him a rating for training. If he generates more than 25k but less than 30k, his score is 2, and the rating is poor, and so on until we get to the top, which is greater than 45k in sales, which gets him a score of 5 and a rating of remarkable. If you're familiar with the if function, in order to calculate the score, we have to use multiple if functions and most of them with the AND operator. To save time, I have already prepared the formula and calculated the score. Let's quickly go through this formula. We start with checking if D2 is less than 25k. If true, then it should return with a score of 1. But if it is false, then we have to start another if argument. But this time we have to check if our value here lies between 25k and 30k, and for that we have to use the AND operator. And if it does falls between 25 and 30k, it should return the value as 2. Else it moves to the next argument and so on until we reach the final argument, which if our sales figure is greater than 45k, it should return a score of 5. Our formula here works perfectly, and to recheck it, let's change the value in D7, which has a score of 1, to something a little better. Let's say 37,000, and our score changes to excellent. So we are sure our formula is working as it should. Now to the next step. We need to give a rating based on this score. This one is simple though. It will need nested if, but we don't have to use the AND operator since we are working with single values and not a range as in our previous formula. So let's write our formula here. We need to check what is our score in column E and then bring our relevant rating from column K. So we start with if. Our first argument is if E2 is equal to 1. If yes, then it should bring this value from K2 here. And we need to fix this by pressing F4 since we will be dragging this formula down and we don't want this value to change. For our false argument, we need to start with another if, and this time we will check if our value in E2 is equal to 2, and if it is, it should show K3. F4 it again to fix it, and let's move to another one. Let me do this quickly and we'll move on to how the switch formula will get rid of all this craziness. Okay, that's done. For our final else argument, we have chosen double quotes, meaning if our score isn't anything from here, it should leave our cell blank. Now we have our formula completed. Let's just drag this down. And here we have all the ratings we needed. Let's just check one random value. This time, let's change the value in D4 from 1 to 4 and it's working fine. Miss Aisha has been upgraded from training to excellent. Let's get her back to where she was. Now to start the magic. In our if formula here, we have to use nested if statements because that is how it works. We provide an argument and then we have to ask Excel to bring what if our argument was true and then what if it was false. In this case, if it was true, it brings up a rating, and if it was false, it moves to our next rating. In this example, we only have 5 ratings and scores. But what if we had more? Can you imagine the number of if formulae we'll have to write? Instead, we can use switch, which is a lifesaver in such scenarios. The syntax of switch is simple. I know you must be thinking, how can it be simple when there's so many words? But all it boils down to is this. Switch starts with an expression, which will be our performance score in column E. And then we simply keep on adding values to compare it to our expression, and if it is true, which result to pull up here. If it is false, we move on to next value and result. Let me write the formula here and you'll get a better idea. Switch, and it asks for our expression. So we select our cell E2, which is what we need to check against this table here. Now it asks for the value 1 to compare our expression with. So we select J2 and fix it with F4. Next is result 1. And we select a cell K2 for that and fix it again with F4. That's all for our first condition. If it is true, it will show our text from cell K2. If it's not, let's add more values and results. Now we have to check if our expression in E2 is 2, which is in cell J3, F4 to fix it, and if it is, our result should be from cell K3. You can keep adding these values and results up to 126 matching values and results. Now imagine if you had to write a nested if with 126 arguments. Once you have finished such a formula, just the closing brackets alone will take a good minute or more. But here, we just have to keep checking this value with an expression we only have to mention once and get the result. And if our value doesn't match our expression, switch automatically moves on to the next. So now we have our switch formula complete, and for the final argument, which is default, we simply mention not rated in double quotes. By the way, since this bit is optional, we can also skip this. Let's drag our formula down, and here we have our ratings all ready to go. Again, this is a small example, and you might be thinking that nested if ain't that bad. Why do you have to learn something new? But as I said, my example here is only with 5 conditions. If you have yours that's dozens, then you will definitely find the benefit of switch. Let's test our formula by changing some scores here. Let's change our score for Isabella Chen in E9 from 1 to 4, and she has been upgraded just like that. We have also used the default argument here, which returns a value when our expression in column E has not matched with anything here. If you remember, we have mentioned it as not rated in double quotes. So if I am to change the value here in E9 to 6, and lo and behold, we have nothing in our if formula, and switch formula results with not rated, which it should have. So that's how you can save time in a situation where you are stuck with arguments which needs you to compare a single value with single results. I'm saying single because, as you may have guessed by now, if you're working with ranges like in our first example here, where we had to calculate the score, we are stuck with using if statements with the AND operator. In other cases, switch function is going to save you a lot of time and hassle. That's all for this video. I hope I was able to elevate your Excel game and you will be able to use this function in your work environment and amaze your colleagues while getting it done in half the time. I'll see you in the next one. Until then, like, share, comment and subscribe. Happy spreadsheeting.